Hello, Rolf. And first of all, thank you a lot because you accepted my invitation. And since long time, I'm waiting to open this Pandora box because for me it's a Pandora box. This subject about astrocartography. But first of all, my dear community, my dear friends, Romanians, and all over the world, because we speak in English, and I'm sure a lot of people can understand what about we will talk here today. Today, a very important subject for, I guess, the main majority of us, because today we are not so static anymore. We are more mobile in comparing with other generations. We will debate, and it's about astrocartography or locational astrology. Rolf, thank you again and welcome.
Thank you very much, Patricia. So about myself, I started with astrology in 2013. So actually, I wanted to get answers after a very harsh breakup with a girl, and then the thing was, I was pretty much a skeptic, right? I was a big skeptic. I didn't really believe in it too much, but I was just curious. I just I give things a try. I always find out. I want to find out if things work, even if they sound crazy, and I did that, and
Yes.
very quickly I realized that there was something very profound there, right? So a lot of
Hmm.
descriptions were very accurate, and I actually have training in NLP and hypnosis, so I understand when
Hmm.
something is just cold reading, right? It's something that fits to everybody, or if it's really like accurate, right? And I was surprised by some of the texts and some of the things that I read, how accurate they were about myself, and
Hmm.
that's when I started to study it and to see how I can practice it. And one of the things that I realized that was a little challenging for me in the beginning was, while there were so many fascinating things that really get results and that really do work, the, this approach to really like get like actual results with astrology and also measuring them, right? Like also, I mean, so many
Hmm. Hmm.
astrologers are amazing at predicting things after they happened, right? Why they happened, and like, yeah, good job, you
Yes.
know. If you're really good, you should be able to predict it before. I don't care about your analysis after it happened, right?
Yes.
Because you can find so many
Yes.
things that might be the reason, but then again, there's similar
Hmm.
situations with similar aspects, and then it doesn't happen. So my biggest goal was to really focus on doing astrology in a pragmatic way where I can really say, okay, this is a time. You can see what kind of times there are, what kind of time qualities you have around in your chart, and then to really not be passive and
Yes.
wait for, I don't know, your partner or for money to come, but to actually understand
Hmm.
when and what action you need to take in order to make things happen, right? And I think this approach,
Yes.
I don't see many astrologers do that too much, to be very honest.
Doing that. No, it's something new. As much as I understood from the people around me who are deep down in the study of astrology, it's something, okay, I can't say very new. At least we have 20, 30 years since these
Yeah,
techniques are on the market. But
yeah,
I guess now people are more prepared to take some objective conclusions,
yeah,
just because the type of feedback which is coming from the real life. So
hmm,
it's working, and now we finally had enough time to see if these are just theories or
yeah,
is
yeah.
something real. And the reason why I invited you, and which about I want to say a few words to my community, is that you not alone, in team with the others. Maybe you can describe a little your colleagues,
Of
because
course.
it's not only you. You have a very large community, a
Hmm,
group, a forum, I would say, on Facebook. That's
hmm,
how I've met you.
yeah,
And I would like to say a few words about what are you doing there and who are your colleagues and
of
what's
course.
exactly about, because it's a huge community. It's a beautiful large community of people who
Yeah,
are in love by astrology, by astrocartography actually.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So, to continue where I finished, the at some
Mm-hmm.
point that was like in 2016, I think 15 or 16. I encountered astrocartography by looking at astro.com, and uh, I was at some point very like curious about a specific place where I knew people from because I done salsa and they were in my place. They lived in Berlin, and I
Yes.
liked the group from there very much. So I kind of was very curious why I was so drawn to that place. And then I looked at astrocartography, which I then again, another thing where I didn't believe it would work. I looked at it, and that was exactly my
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter ascendant line running exactly through the place where they came from. And that's how I
Wow.
actually got into it. And when I was there, I was treated like a king. You know, people were treating me very differently, a very different experience than
Fantastic.
from
Yes.
anywhere else, right? And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, that
Mm-hmm.
was an obvious thing that showed me that this actually works, right? And that's
Yes.
why I actually got into the astrocartography more. And then the
Mm-hmm.
more I got into it, the more I saw that a lot of things were very fascinating, but it wasn't getting me all of the results that I wanted. And also, just because you have a Jupiter line in a place doesn't mean that you are going to be treated like a king. So there's no guarantee for it, because the rest of the
Yes.
chart also has a story about your Jupiter. And if your Jupiter is in a
Mm-hmm.
difficult position, the Jupiter lines can be challenging too, right? And every line can be challenging.
Yes.
So
Mm-hmm.
at some point, that was in 2017, I think, I was invited to, or no, it was 2019, 2017, the astrocartography and locational astrology group, back then it was just locational astrology group, on Facebook, was created by Jane Kendall. And
Mm-hmm.
then at some point, she invited, she made Cindy into an admin and gave her the group, right? And
Cindy
then
McCain. Cindy McCain, because we were not
exactly.
saying yes.
Cindy McKean,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who also is an amazing astrologer. She lives
McCain.
in
Sorry.
Chicago now. Um, and I also highly recommend you to connect with her, because she's a very, very good astrologer. And she's been practicing
I will.
astrology
I hope she
for,
will hear us.
yeah, oh, for sure. And she practiced astrology for many decades, even though you don't see it because she looks very young. But she's a physician,
She's
right?
wonderful.
She studied
Mm-hmm.
medicine, she became a doctor. And at some point she's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
astrology is better for me than being a doctor. I mean, that has to mean something, right? It's not just crazy people who
Yes.
read a few books and then they look at weird symbols.
Exactly.
It's really like
Yes.
people who are successful in real life already, and then they're like, well, astrology
Yes.
makes me even more successful by applying it on my life.
Mm-hmm.
So at in 2000, and that was in 2021, the astrocartography group really started to grow, because back then there was another astrocartography group. The leader of that group didn't really allow that group to grow so much, because it very restricted the group. And at some point,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't want the group anymore. She archived it, and that's when Cindy at some point asked me, because I was very active in her group. She asked me, I think you would make a great admin here. And I was very flattered. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do this. So I became an admin
Yes.
in the beginning of last year. And in that time, from then to now, the group more than tenfolded, right? So now we have 13,000 people, and before
Mm-hmm.
it was less than 1,300, right? So
You're doing
and
great things there. Absolutely great things. And people apply. They can
yeah,
apply.
yeah,
That's the type of information which you can find there. And this is extraordinary today because everybody wants immediately to have results. And
yeah,
well,
yeah.
I don't know if it's working immediately, but at least you can apply that type of information.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
the good thing is that people at some point they just start to do things, right? So
Yes.
just using astrology in general, again, it is a subject that is a field that is as big as medicine or any big subject, because there's so many nuances and different ways of looking at things, right? And some people are like, oh, I only use this house system, or only this kind of astrology works. And for me, since the universe is multidimensional, there
Yes.
is not one astrology, there is not one technique, right? There's many techniques, and it's always about the interpreter, how well the astrology is actually working, right? It's never the fault of the stars, it's always usually the fault of the astrologer if it doesn't work. And if it
Yes.
works,
Yes.
then the astrologer
Mm-hmm.
understood how to interpret it, which also requires, of course, not just technique but also intuition, right? To some extent.
Intuition.
So what
Yes.
the group
Um,
the thing that people can do in the group is they can post their chart, they can post their natal chart, they can post their astrocartography map, which they can find on astro.com for free. And then they can have
mhm.
people, some professionals, some semi-professional, some amateurs, answer and give them a few opinions about what they might experience in different places, right?
Or
That's
more,
pretty much.
yes, more steps forward.
Yeah,
Yes, how would you, what is it astrocartography? How
of
would you
course,
describe this for
of
someone
course.
who the first time can hear such a
So,
yes.
if you don't know anything about astrology, then astrocartography would be described the easiest in the exact time when you were born. There was a place where the sun was rising. There was a place where the sun was setting. There was a place where the sun was exactly above you, which is the astronomical noon. And there was places where there
Mhm.
was midnight in the exact time when you were born, right? Which was the astronomical midnight. So all of these places have a significance. And now you can do this with every other celestial object in our solar system, right? That's pretty much what this is.
Yes.
Which planet was rising, which one was setting, which one was above me, and which one was below me, right? In the places where you go, and it gives your chart a fluidity, because then you're not just the person who has an ascendant in a specific place everywhere.
Mhm.
It just really changes to the place, and that's the thing about astrocartography, which is actually
Mhm.
is the Jim Lewis, who is the inventor of astrocartography. He's not the inventor of the relocation chart, but of astrocartography. What he did is he looked at pretty much a date, a time, a place, and he looked at through what places the sun is on the ascendant, through what places the sun is on the IC, the DC, and the MC, the midheaven,
I
and
see.
um,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then he connected all of those dots, and then lines appeared, right? Um,
Yes.
so that's pretty much what astrocartography is. And if you go to these places, if you go to planetary lines, if you go to the sun line, if you go to the moon line, they will have pretty significant effects. Now, they are not always the same, and the interpretations should always be, checked out with caution, because they're not always. I mean, I
Yes.
I disagree with several things with Jim Lewis too, right? Not everything, I don't agree with everything, but the majority of I mean, what I would recommend the majority do is just to look at your astrocartography lines and look at which places you've already been to
Mhm.
or where you live, and then a lot of the subjects, right, of these interpretations, they tend to come
Mhm.
forward, right, and it can even
Yes,
work remotely.
because a next logic normal question would be a lot of questions will come
Mm-hmm.
in conforming with about what you will say here. So even if I have some questions prepared for you, especially for some topics, I would like to have a free spontaneously dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
because it's always better and it's alive.
Sure.
What do we need for a casual chart analysis? What do we need to prepare in the moment when we decide to not necessarily to have a trip? Because
Mm-hmm.
theoretically, when you have a trip, when you go somewhere to relax,
Mm-hmm.
automatically you put yourself in that type of energy, like, okay, now I will gonna have fun, I will relax, I'm already open to feel good, I want
Mm-hmm.
to feel good, I am
Mm-hmm.
doing a huge effort, I go there and I'm, for example, I want to visit some islands or wherever, egal.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is how to work when we really want to apply this type of information from astrocartography in our chart,
Yep.
if we decide to accept a job offer and this is completely far away,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
thousands of kilometers, how the life will change. Because if you talk with someone who is not at all interested about astrology, they will watch us and they will say, okay, this is a nice story for kids, but don't tell me this
Mm-hmm.
because I can't believe.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
So
that's
how
that's the beauty of astrocartography or locational astrology in general. If you know what you're doing, and if you do get results, the thing is,
Mhm.
like, even the non-believers, if you send them to a specific line, especially like to harsher lines, they're gonna feel the difference, and
Mhm.
it's gonna be impossible for them to say that it
To
doesn't
ignore.
work unless their birth time is
Yes.
not accurate, right? But otherwise, if their birth time
Yes.
is accurate, and if they're willing to really test it out with actual data that works, um,
Hmm.
they will go to those places and they will find out that they have really big significance. Now, the importance is when you look at astro.com, and if you look at those lines, like I said before, not every line is as nice as it sounds in the description. Because if you have, let's say, Jupiter squared by Pluto or Jupiter conjunct
Hmm.
Saturn, it's not gonna be as Jupiterian as you might think, right? So
Yes.
it is important to also look at the conditions of the planets. Now,
Hmm.
I'll go a step further, and I haven't seen any astrologer do this so far. I use the also I use the relocation chart, which is something that a lot of astrologers do. Unfortunately, not
Yes.
enough, but still a lot of people who do locational astrology, but then I also look at the chart of a country, right? When was the country created? When was the last chart? When was the last constitution, right? And then you use the synastry, and you just look at if as if this was a partner, right? As if this was a friend. What kind of relationship will I have with this system, right? If this was a person, if this maybe, you know. The thing in synastry is just really funny. If you look at synastry books, the majority
Hmm.
of them are just about romantic relationships between a man and a woman, so very one-sided, right? And
Yes, 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 yes.
if you start to use this, but also with a more open mind, and say, okay, I mean, I understand this is a good or is a difficult aspect, this is a more romantic and sexual aspect, and this one isn't. Um, the interesting thing
Hmm.
is when you go to those places, the place is going to give you these experiences, right? So a place can be a good or a difficult partner for you, and you can see that by interpreting the synastry chart either with the country or the state,
Hmm.
if it's in the US, or the city, right? There are incorporation dates and foundation dates. Sometimes they are both. If they have both, even better, then you can do both of them. And they have significance. They are extremely important. And what I do also differently than most of the astrologers out there, I would say over 99%, is that I don't tell them where to go. I ask them what kind of place they already feel attracted to, right? And then I look at why. And I ask them
Hmm.
what kind of goals do they have,
Yes.
right? Like what do they want? And then also,
Yes.
how do you know that you got what you want? Right? Because I want you to measure. I want to measure your success, and I want to, because if you report back to me, no matter if it's good or bad,
Hmm.
that's how I become a better astrologer, right? So that's the best thing any of my
Absolutely.
clients can do, is to tell me if anything got me results and what kind of results they gotten. And with this approach, a lot of people were very surprised that a lot of things were extremely accurate. I mean, like, um, one of the my very good friends, for example, she had a very harsh Pluto aspect, Pluto transit on
Hmm.
her descendant, and I already told her what's going to happen because I had the aspect 2 years before her or 1 year before her, so I knew what kind of an
Yeah.
overall
Mm.
energy she would have. Plus, I looked at her
Hmm.
solar return chart, I looked at other planetary return charts, and I saw that there were going to be a lot of Pluto aspects, and also in the return chart, Pluto was also, and also in the transit, Pluto was opposing her Mars, right, which makes it even harsher. So
Hmm.
Mars was very close to
Yes.
her
So you
ascendant.
include your transits.
Yeah,
You include transits to
it
the natal chart and relocated
you
chart too.
always you always have to do
Definitely.
that, and not
Hmm.
not just transits. Most of the astrologers just do transits, and progressions are so much more powerful. And I
Progressions and
mean,
directions. Yes.
also, yeah, and also solar arc and all of these things, they give
Hmm.
you much more results, and it also gives you a much slower Venus to work with, because you have a Venus transit, let's say half a day. You maybe feel a little better,
Hmm.
but it's not like you're gonna meet your partner or significant other just by
Absolutely.
having a
Yes.
Venus aspect. So the progressed Venus, on the other
Yes.
hand,
Another.
is much more strong.
I'm absolutely sure we will show some charts too, because
Yeah,
we talk and it's theoretically, but I would like
yeah.
to show some charts too, but not yet. Another
Hmm.
question which I've prepared for you, it's if you go on a certain line,
Hmm.
do you directly feel that influence, or it's just a certain amount of time? How long do you think it takes until you adjust that new energies, if you have a conclusion here, or at least from your clients with
Yeah.
who you already
It's
worked until now?
that's a very good question. So
It takes a while, or
um, that's the thing. It's different for the people, and one of the main things that in the end decides how fast this aspect is going to happen is how much you are
mm,
willing to adapt to the place, right? How much are you willing
exactly.
to surrender to the place's energy, right? If you stay in your own bubble, and if you
Yes.
expect, I mean, a lot of people, I live in Cyprus now. I actually retired
Hmm.
last year here, and I came here to retire to Cyprus, and before I lived in Germany. And it is very
Are you
common.
retired at your age?
Yeah,
This
well,
is
I
unbelievable.
I
Sorry, I
I
can't.
used of I used astrology, and that was like 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago now. I was at a point where I was like, okay, I really want financial
Wow.
abundance. And
Security.
yeah, and I was like,
Yes.
I already gotten great results with astrology, and I had a lot of nice, I even before I did like 400 readings for free, right? I did 3 years of free readings, and in that
Wow.
before I
Congratulations.
yeah,
Yes.
thank you. Before I started doing that, like really, where I was like, okay, every week I'm gonna do 2 to 3 readings every single week, and
Mm-hmm.
when I did that, what was interesting was I was like, okay, I think I really have something here that really works. But if I'm even remotely as good as an astrologer as I think I am, I should be able to make money
Mm-hmm.
without taking money for my readings, right? And be able to retire
Mm-hmm.
at 35. That was my goal. And then I
Wow.
used it, and it worked much better than I've expected because I use any chart, right? I use any chart
Mm-hmm.
in combination with any chart, right? Which is a lot of astrologers don't do that. I mean, every system, everything that was
Yes.
created, everything that has a date has a chart, and everything that you interact with has an astrological effect with you, right? So everything rubs off
Mm-hmm.
on you,
Mm-hmm.
and you rub off on other things as well. So I looked at that; it worked
I
out
was
pretty
just
well. Go ahead.
I was just I was just my last interview. It was with Steve Jude, and he was saying something similar. He told me, not only for the public, he told me that he found his own style, and I love this because it's coming from results.
Yeah,
You just it's not a black box.
yeah.
You just try this and that and that, and actually all that information is there for us to serve us and to combine and to mix. And I think you found somehow your own way, and
Exactly,
it
one
has
of the many
results.
ways,
And look
right?
at
It's
you.
one of the many
Yes.
possible ways. So
Yes.
there's not just the one way, and I don't think that I'm
Mm-hmm.
the only astrologer who does that. But there are few astrologers who actually
No, no,
do
no.
retire financially. And for me, it was so I was like, okay, I'm gonna finish at 35. I want to retire at 35, and I was like, okay, it's a very ambitious goal, right? And then it worked out much better than I've expected. I also
Yes,
had
it
a
is.
nice astrological aspects in that time, financial aspects. So it worked very well. I did
Mm-hmm.
the right things at the right time. I also worked very hard at understanding. So it's not just using astrology on the stock
Yes.
market and succeeding. You have
Yes.
to understand the stock market too, right? So I understood, and the thing was, I
Yes.
did an analysis from both sides. And I didn't mix them, right? I looked at the what does the technical analysis by just looking at the price charts say, and what does the astrology say, and then I looked at both of these results individually, and then I looked at if they were overlapping, right? and and at some point
Yes, but
that
another small
yeah.
yes, sorry, another small question would be here based on the same aspect. Do you work with companies or do you work with private clients? You work with both, or how? I mean,
um
such a result you can
so,
have only if you probably work with.
so when I did the financial astrology for myself, right,
Mm-hmm.
for the
Mm-hmm.
trading and for the investment, um that was by using company charts, by using stock charts. So when the stock was first
Yes. Okay.
IPO'd, and so I look at those things. I look at progressions, I look at solar arc, I look at transits, and one of the very important things is to always understand what is the main chart, right? Sometimes it's not even the company's chart. Sometimes it's a chart of a country, right? I mean, the U.S. is the
Mm-hmm.
country of the leading currency, right? So it makes sense to also take that into consideration, right? And we have a nice chart for that as well, the 4th of July,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
a lot of these things, if you
Wow.
start to combine them, and if you start, and I mean,
Mm-hmm.
today, yes, I'm much more privileged than Jim Lewis, who was one of the greatest astrologers out there and very creative, but I have better tools than him. I have much better tools. I can look at many more
Better
charts than
tools.
he could
Yes.
ever look in his life
Absolutely.
in a very short amount of time. So I have much
Yes.
more privilege to look at different
Mm-hmm.
things, and connecting the dots gets much easier if you have many things you can look at the same time. And this is not going to stop. It's going to go more and more.
But
And
you
that,
need
yeah, you need.
but you need a specific type of abilities, because I think you have some technical abilities. This is not for everyone. I mean, I'm an artist. Look at me. You can
Yeah,
teach me to handle some things and
yeah.
to improve a little my life if I would change probably the geographic
Mhm.
location. But this, it doesn't mean that I can have the same results like you because I don't have your skills. So I just want to be realistic in the message which my public will
Mhm.
will get. And yes,
I mean,
I'm not sure if this is for everyone.
you have to
Yes.
be an analyst in your heart, right? And you don't have to be
Yeah,
extremely,
exactly.
like, you don't have to be the smartest brain, it's more about the strategy. It's more
Mm-hmm.
about the approach, the system that you approach it with. And
The
I think
structure.
it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter
Mm-hmm.
what system you look at, and this is not just for astrology, it's for any system that I know out there, especially when it comes to therapy.
Yes.
The majority of people don't test their work. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
The majority of people don't test their work.
Okay.
So why the hell? How the hell are they gonna succeed? How the hell are they gonna get better? And at some point, when people call
Yes.
themselves a master astrologer, I mean, I have done enough to call myself, but I would never call myself that. I always look at myself as a student, as a
Right.
researcher,
Yeah.
and I'm always, even in
Mm-hmm.
30 or 50 years, I will always want to keep an open mind. Because if
Mm-hmm.
something works better than what I've done ever in my life, I want to learn and I want to use that, right? And I don't care about my ego. Sure, some part of my ego is gonna be a little sad about this, if I might have done something wrong for a long time.
Yes.
But in the end, I want to I want to get the results, right? So if I get something that gets me
Yes.
the results, and if it works better than what I've done so far, I I sure as hell will make sure to include that into my work, right? And that's, I think, one of the things that the majority of people don't do in every system.
Yes, that's true. Absolutely. I was close to say stimmt
Hmm.
because you are born in Germany
Yeah,
and I speak here mixed.
yeah,
But people who don't speak German language, they don't know what it means.
yeah,
It's kind of right.
yeah.
But I still wait an answer for how long time it takes until you feel
So
these type of influences.
the
I know
the
it's
influence
difficult, but
the first time when I went to Jupiter, to the Jupiter line, and this is not, I didn't make this up. It already started when I was packing my things, when I was getting ready for it. I already felt the
wow,
Jupiter. Yeah. And the time when I really
fantastic.
felt it, the time when I really really felt it, that was when the plane was almost entering, like when it was almost landing, right? So
So
um,
almost instantly. Mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah, even before, right? Even before I hit it. So that's the
So you
thing. It
moved under the Jupiter line.
just
You
traveled
are in
there.
Cyper
Didn't
because of
didn't
the
No, no, no.
Jupiter.
This here
Ah,
I'm in my
no.
on my
Okay.
sun line, but then again, the the successes that I had was under no line, and that's what I want to also explain to people, because people are like, oh, I
Mhm.
don't live on any line, blah blah blah. This is so sad. I have to move to a line. No, you don't have to move to a line to be
Yes.
successful. That's
No,
just,
you don't.
if you look at, if every celebrity's chart out there, especially the ones where you have a time and a date and a place,
Hmm.
not all of them were born under Jupiter or Pluto midheaven or whatever line. They got
Hmm.
powerful because other aspects are at least as important, if not even more important, than astrocartography lines, right? In my opinion, if you go to a big country, I mean, every country that has many people, or any system that has many people, if you interact with it, that system is gonna rub off on you, right? And just looking at
I'm
what
absolutely
place,
sure there.
yeah,
Yes, sorry. We have a delay on the
yeah, a
sound,
little
and that's
delay,
why
I know.
sometimes I interrupt your idea. But I promise you, I will let you to finish the ideas. I think we both are enthusiastic by the subject that I want to talk a lot, and you. Um, I want to ask you how. Um, According with what you've just said, I'm absolutely sure there are some keys to work with the location where you are, because you cannot travel.
Yeah.
Not all of us can
Mhm.
afford to
Mhm.
travel, so we have some holidays, but
Mhm.
you have a family. It's not only about you anymore. When you
Of
have a
course,
husband, a
of
child, it's
course,
complicated.
of
And then
course.
if you are in a location where you are not very, let's say, happy, or you feel something, it's a kind of treasure there, I'm absolutely sure there are some keys. Or am I wrong? Are
Um,
they or not?
so
to
if
to
you do
adjust the
if you
situation.
do live in a place that is difficult for you, right? And by the way, I had that in Germany too, right? It was very good financially, but other things were very very challenging and
Mm-hmm.
difficult. So it wasn't just easy. And if you do live in a
Mm-hmm.
place that has challenges, there's several things you can do. One of the famous one for astrocartography or locational astrology in general is finding the greatest places. And today we have the globalization. You can pretty much order anything from anywhere on the internet, right? So uh,
Yes, absolutely.
what do you have in Cyprus? You have nice herbs, you have specific foods, you have salt, right? You can take these things, bring them to your place where you live, if it has a nice place, if it has a nice aspect for you, and then you can consume it, and it's still going to have an effect, right? One of my working colleagues in the
I
last
need some
company.
sun here. How to bring the sun in Germany? That's That's the main question
you
here. You
you
know what
cannot
type of weather it's here.
you cannot bring the sun, but you can bring, for example, I mean, there's very nice services in Germany. There's very nice startups that allow you to order fruits from a specific country that are ripe, and once you
Hmm.
order them, and that day they're
Hmm.
picked, they're sending them over in boxes, and then
Hmm.
you have the sun through food, right? which
Hmm.
which is something, if you consider that
Wow.
Germany has only 20% of the food of vegetables and fruits actually come from Germany, and the rest comes from outside. It just shows
Yes.
how crappy the
Yes.
quality of food is over there. I mean, just how it tastes compared to here in Cyprus, 300 sunny days.
Yes.
Even the generic food, right, tastes better than the organic food in Germany, right? So the sun is
I know
very
in Romania
important.
is the same
Of
for
course, the
the
tomato in
people who
Romania,
have gardens and absolutely
yeah,
delicious.
yeah,
I can't explain to my daughter because she's born here in Ulm and she has no idea. But now we had a trip at home and finally she understood. She told me, "Mommy, I can eat these tomatoes."
I know,
She was so cute.
I know,
Yes, I understand
that
what you
makes
say.
sense. Yeah,
It's a fantastic wisdom, I would say, and it's fantastic when you know how to use it. But if you
yeah,
are prepared and if you think it's a good moment, I would challenge you first to talk a little about your chart and
mhm.
then maybe about mine or
Of
how
course,
we are doing with
of
some
course,
examples or some. I
yes,
would I would like to effectively to see in practice such a story, how it changed, and yes,
of
we
course.
will do some
Let me just
shares
share
and.
my screen.
Mhm. Because me and my friends, who I have a circle of friends who are all in love with astrology, and
Mhm.
they are becoming more and more fascinated by this, and some of them they've started to study deep down, and they are coming from different fields, engineers, mathematicians, or doctors, or
Great,
lawyers, or
very interesting.
and they. Yes, and they are really curious about this because, and my intuition, it was first to ask them, what exactly would you like to activate in your life in this moment of your life, because you
Yeah,
cannot change everything just
yeah,
to do an experiment.
yeah.
And I'm very curious how it's working.
Okay, so I suppose you can see my
Yes,
chart here. Perfect.
I can see. Hmm.
So I was
Hmm.
born in Germany, in a small place close to Würzburg, or close to Frankfurt. A lot of people know Frankfurt. And
Hmm.
you can see that I have a Pisces midheaven, right? So there is some Pisces energy when it comes to the way that I approach, especially now approach my career. And my ascendant is Cancer, right? So I have a very emotional person. My chart
Hmm.
is ruled by the moon, and you can also see that I have Mars in the 10th house, and I definitely, I mean, all of my working colleagues and the companies that I've worked with, they feel that for sure, and they felt that very long time.
Yes.
So they really, this things alone already had a strong impact. Now, at some point when I was how old was I? 5.5 years old. I moved to
Hmm.
Istanbul, right, to Turkey, because I'm half German, half Turkish,
Hmm.
and when I moved there,
Hmm.
the chart changed a little bit. So I act as if I was born in Istanbul at the exact same time when I was born in Germany, right? So convert the time, I convert the place, and then I look
Yes.
at the same time when it was Germany, how it changed over there, and you can already see it changed pretty significantly because the midheaven now is much closer to Mars, and the midheaven is also now ruled by Mars, right? So it is
Maybe
a
you can
more
put a little the chart up. I can see only the up part from the paper. Maybe you can put in the middle of the chart somehow to see
okay,
the IC. I can't see the IC.
okay.
No,
Uh,
it's a too big screen.
Let me
Yes,
just
now it's good. Now
so
it's good.
um,
Mm-hmm.
what you can see here is um, the midheaven changed, right? The ascendant also changed a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I still have the same ascendant as before, and you can
Mm-hmm.
see that also the houses in general they change a little bit, right? They change their positions, and that already had a strong impact. Now, the way that I approach things is I don't just look at this chart. I go back to the chart selection and I look at how a country actually affects me, right? So the first way I would look at astrology from the very beginning is to use my natal chart, and see what kind of
Yes.
energy Germany had because I was born there. So I go to the natal. There we have him.
If I remember the ascendant of Germany, but probably I'm wrong. I'm not sure. It's in Libra. I'm not
Mhm.
very sure if I remember
No,
well.
no, it's not in Libra, but
I was not checking yet.
not the. I mean, not the last one. The last
No.
one is the IC is in Libra, right? But
Okay. The
uh,
IC it's in Libra.
I think it was. But maybe you're right. We're gonna look at it. Maybe you're even right. I think it is possible
Yes,
that
we
you're
will.
right.
Yes, because some some countries have different dates, and some
Yeah,
astrologers are working with different dates. For example, for Romania, there are 2, 3 charts, and it's a lot of debate here. So
yeah,
first of all, you need to be very sure about the chart of that country, and
yeah.
then to check this.
So the way that I like
Yes.
to start is usually look at the last chart when I was born, the last chart of Germany. Back then it was divided, right? I was born in the very end of the time when there was the west and the east in Germany, and they were divided.
Yes, yes,
So
yes,
I look
yes.
at the western chart, right, which was 49, 23rd of May, 4 p.m.
Hmm.
And one thing that is very significant that I see today is that the midheaven of Germany, of the West Germany, right, is exactly sitting on my Chiron, right? And my
Yes,
my
yes.
parents, when I moved to Turkey, my parents sent me before they went, before they moved, because they wanted me not to be too much involved into all of the stress. But they didn't really tell me that I
Hmm.
wasn't gonna come back, right? And I was five and a half, so I wasn't stupid, and they didn't really understand how significant it is that a child is moving, and they're not telling them, this is actually the last time you're gonna come here because you're moving. So they just send me to my
Yes.
grandmother, and I felt abandoned, right? What
Hmm.
is what is Chiron? Chiron is abandonment by the parents, right? It was abandoned by the parents because
Exactly.
so that
Exactly.
that was a very strong effect that I had. And you can see in general, right? The You can see that um, the Saturn of the country. This is, by the way, where the moon is actually more here. This is the Venus, so the Venus is at 4 degrees
Hmm.
in Virgo, and Saturn is 4 degrees away from it. So I
Hmm.
really felt the Saturn, and it was very challenging for me to find great partners over there, right? To find a great girlfriend.
Hmm.
When I went to other
Hmm.
countries, the women were very attractive, especially in some of them. And in Germany, when I was there, I mean, as a kid, again, this when I was 5, that didn't really matter. But when I got older and I was in Turkey, I just realized that the girls and women there found me way more attractive. When I came to Germany, nobody really liked me that much, or I wasn't really that interesting. And you can also see that the
Fantastic.
Germany's Neptune sits very close to my Sun, right? So that's also a conjunction here.
Hmm.
You can see that the ascendant
Hmm.
of the West Germany is definitely in Libra, is in the beginning of Libra, which is
Yes,
also opposed
yes,
by my Mars, right? Also not the easiest aspect. So
yes,
my Mars is on the descendant of Germany, right? And it's a strong Mars. It's in the first decan of its own sign, right? That and it is retrograde too,
yes,
so it's
in
also
Aquarius.
repressed anger too, for sure. And
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
like you said, you also got angry because things didn't work. Your technology didn't really work that well, and I really understand that because
Yes.
the Martian people, and you have a Sun in
Oh,
Aries. They are aggressive
yes.
people, but aggression then again is a very powerful and great thing if you channel it in the right way, and it gets things done. It gets
Exactly,
so it's
exactly.
actually a great
Hmm.
advantage. So this was the beginning. Again, this is very significant, the midheaven, because if you look at the chart of Turkey with my chart, um, you're gonna see. Let me just.
It's
There.
fascinating. I don't want to talk because I'm afraid I will cut again your flu, and
No
I don't want
problem. No problem. So you can always
because I
ask
try to see
questions.
how you changed everything. And about Chiron, I
Hmm.
confirm I have Chiron in the
Hmm.
12th house too, and it's
Ah.
exactly the same story. I can't say I was
Ah.
abandoned, but I grew up with my grandmother, which is again another story about abandonment and about,
Yeah.
oh my God, it's
So your
really,
parents your
it's
parents did
absolutely.
live or do live,
Yes,
or
they
okay,
still
but
live,
they
but I
they
grew up with my
also
grandmother, and
okay,
they
okay.
gave me as a very small young child. I was 2 years old, or maybe 1 and 6 months, something. Of course, it was a kind of shock. You can say it's not necessarily shock, but it's something you have the feeling that probably you are abandoned deep down inside of you. You
Yeah.
really suffer,
Yeah.
even if you don't think logic. It's just
No.
that intuition, that raw
No.
feelings, that and slowly and by the way, now I have Chiron return. Now Chiron is conjunct with my son, and I
You're
started to dig a
okay.
lot on that stories, and yep.
Well, you saw what
Long story.
Justin Trudeau did when he had his Chiron return. He just went away and tried to hide, right, after all of his.
Yes,
So it is definitely a significant one. And for people who don't
it
know
is.
this, the Chiron return,
It,
it takes, I think,
yeah,
49 years, or how much?
between 49
Yeah,
51,
yeah. And
let's say,
so
plus minus,
so
because
this
it's not a regular orbit.
no,
It's another story.
it's
It's not
it's a,
like
it's
Saturn
the
or like Jupiter.
it's the
It's
time when guys are famous for getting their midlife crisis, right? So it
hmm.
is funny to
Ah, and
look
by
at
the way, I
those.
have the
Yeah.
Uranus on my ascendant. This is another.
Mhm.
They are all together there. And by the way, when you said about Pluto, it came in transit and created that challenging
Mm.
for you. I
Yep.
understand completely, because I have another friend who is born on the same year like you, and he was talking about the similar stuff.
Mm.
And yes,
Mhm.
but let's continue with your chart, because
Sure.
now we
Um,
go on another field.
so what you can see is now the ascendant of Turkey hits my Chiron, right? So there's a double Chiron aspect again, right? Abandonment, and I felt
Yes,
angry and
yes.
abandoned when I was there. And you can see what is here. The
Hmm.
Mars is now on the IC. So while the German Mars was on my DC, now the Mars of Turkey sits on my IC over there of my relocated chart, right? Of my Turkish relocated chart,
Wow.
and
Hmm.
you can see several things here. You can definitely see that there's also Uranus on my north node. The north node is also opposing the south node of the country. So
Hmm.
the north nodes are opposing. So the midheaven and Uranus, all of them hit the north node. Now the north node, a lot of astrologers would agree, becomes much more important after a certain age, right? After you're up
Yes,
on
yes,
your own, right? When you're not supported by your
yes.
parents, when you don't live there anymore, when you do your own thing, that's when your soul actually asks what it
I don't
actually
know
wants.
if I can't say there are rules here, but
No.
I can tell you only from my experience. It depends. Sometimes you feel fragmentary during your teenager time, or probably when you are very young, between 20 27. You can feel sometimes what you
Oh,
really need to do, or
it can
what you
go
are called to
much
do.
earlier.
But and,
It
and yes, it can go much earlier, until you really realize what's your calling and what's your
yeah.
new field where you need to step. It takes a while. But you work with asteroids too, because I see it's a
Yeah.
crowded chart. I
Yeah.
thought you use only planets. You use asteroids
So
too. Okay.
Jim Lewis, the inventor of astrocartography, wasn't a fan of using asteroids. He also wasn't a fan of
Mm-hmm.
using
Mm-hmm.
aspect lines, right? So this is
Mm-hmm.
something that the other people created afterwards, but they work very well. They are very powerful, and also
Yes,
midpoint
they are.
lines, right, which you can't find on astro.com.
And midpoints.
Midpoints are
Well, this
extremely
is
powerful
advanced
too.
astrology for me, so maybe you know much better than me. I don't yet. It's
Well,
coming slowly.
it's
We
just
will see when.
it's just it's just important to understand that everything has a meaning, and the main question of an astrologer in order to get results is what are the prioritized things, what are the main aspects, what is the priority to look at,
Yes.
right? Which chart is important and which
So
aspects are.
So, Rolf, what was important for you to have in the moment when you decided to move to Cyper?
Mhm.
What was important to adjust conforming with this chart? Because I'm curious how you modified everything and what's exactly happening in your chart
Sure,
depending by the new location.
of course. So
Hmm.
to round the story up very quickly, let me just show you the quick change that I made when I came to Berlin. So because then I will go
Oh yeah,
to how I moved
please.
to
Hmm.
Cyprus. Um, so now I'm going to use the other German chart for a very simple reason, because the unification
Hmm.
is now the last chart, and that's pretty much the main energy that the country goes with right now, right? So if you
Okay.
look at the unification chart, and again this is my relocation chart now, you can see that Saturn is on my descendant, right? Again, harsh Saturn
You need
aspects.
to
It's
move
not.
again the chart. You, you
Can you?
need to put a little. Yes, now I can see.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay.
Now it's good.
So
Sorry.
you can see that, yeah, there's a little delay. That's why it sometimes takes longer. You can see. I mean,
Yes,
there's
yes.
one very nice aspect, and that really worked for me. You can see that
Hmm.
Jupiter of Germany sits on my second house cusp, right, of the relocated second house,
Hmm.
right? I mean, that's the money
Yes, I
aspect
can see.
everybody's looking for, right? Here's
Yes,
Jupiter of the
yes.
country, and this is the second house, and this is a very very nice financial aspect to have, right? So it means in general, um,
Hmm.
Germany made it very, very easy for me. If I work hard, right? It's not, you don't get anything for free, right? You still have to put in the effort. But then again,
Of
some
course.
people put a lot of effort and they don't get the money, and
Exactly.
some
Yeah.
people get it with the same effort, sometimes even less effort. And
Yes, because you attract what is necessary for you to open that
yeah,
gate. Klar.
yeah,
Yeah.
very much so. And you can see that Chiron is still very close, right? This the Chiron of the
Mm-hmm.
unification is still close to my ascendant. Again, this is a completely different chart many years
Ascendant.
later, right? 40 years
Yes.
later about.
Yes.
So this is
Mm-hmm.
again a Chiron aspect, and Saturn on the descendant just doesn't make it easy for relationships, right? Um, and I
Yes.
had challenges there. Uh, I mean, it was good actually to have challenges, because I learned guitar, I learned dancing, because the women didn't come that easy, right? So had to make an effort. Now I have all of
Okay,
this.
this it was your focus on that moment and at your age now
Of
because you
course,
are young. The
right?
question is now in your natal chart
Yeah.
Jupiter is doing beautiful aspects. This is
Hmm.
another very interesting point which I am observing just watching fast at your
Hmm. Hmm.
natal chart. So the reason why you describe now how Jupiter helped you, it's because of this reason,
Yeah.
because it's beautiful aspected, or
Um.
because if you would talk probably about the moon who is
Hmm.
doing a square,
Hmm.
if I see well, or what,
Yeah, yeah,
yes, with
very much
Jupiter
so.
or
It
other
has no.
planet.
The moon has a square with Mars, and that's not a nice aspect as well, right? It
Mm-hmm.
means the way that
It's not at all,
Germany
yeah.
initiates things, kind of, it doesn't feel good for me too much, right? There's like a tension. And also, when I express my feelings, uh,
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn to adjust to Germany, especially once I came back from Turkey, because people are way more expressive about their feelings. And in Germany, I'm not saying that they don't have feelings, it's just that they don't express them, right? They don't really express them in a way that
No, they
the
don't.
Mediterraneans do, right? And
They feel, but they don't yes, and I think it's a matter of education, because
yeah,
they feel they are weak when they are showing the emotions in
yeah,
public, and which is
yeah,
not bad. Sometimes it's okay to do like that, because the Romanians are sometimes in extreme, all
yeah,
not of all of them, now we cannot
of course.
generalize.
But you can
Yes,
go overboard.
but
That's true.
yes.
That's very, very true.
But when you move from a location to another, what's again I think important for the people to know, it's
Mhm.
that all the aspects from the natal chart are still the same. They don't
Yeah,
modify,
the
normal.
planetary,
You take them all over, you move.
yeah, the planetary
Yes,
positions
but
don't
how
change.
you
It's the point of view. It's the
exactly,
houses and it's the ascendant that changes,
yes,
especially if you live far away
and
from
how
where you were born.
you they are just adjusted. They are just, for example, a square, it's not so probably with so much the same pressure in a difficult location in comparing with another location where it can decrease the pressure. Or how
Mhm.
how do you feel when you try to melt the pressure of a square from a chart, from a
Well,
birth
it
chart?
always the
i,
question,
I would be very curious if it's possible
well, the thing is,
with astrocartography. Hmm.
for me, squares and oppositions are great, because they offer the greatest opportunity for growth and the greatest opportunity for mastering something. I also really love trines. And a lot of
Yes,
astrologers
but
who say that they like oppositions and squares find trines too boring, but they are nice talents to have, and they're very useful and they are very comfortable.
mhm,
Now, they also, in order to really make something out of a trine, or also a Jupiter aspect, like all of these favorable aspects, they only work very well
mhm,
if you do something with it. Otherwise, you're shooting blanks. The universe is still going to give you something, but it's not going to be remotely as much as you could get if you put in the energy into it. Right. So that's the important thing. And every difficult aspect wants to be mastered, and that's what your chart wants. So also, when you are born in a country with a
yes,
difficult aspect
yes,
to your chart, it means you have a task over there. It means you need to do something over there, right? And
mhm,
that's for you to
mhm,
determine and
mhm.
for you to understand and to analyze when you look at the charts what it actually is. What does the country want from you? What does it want you to learn, right?
Beautiful, you answered. Yes, I'm completely agree. Completely agree.
So
But especially you watch the
yeah,
ascendant when you move somewhere, or this is the most important impact in a
um, I
new
would say
location, or
I would
how
say
would
the
you
most
describe?
important impact has to be the country charts, right? Because again, I've done astrocartography for long enough, and like I've been practicing
Hmm.
astrology, even though I did like only 2 or 3 readings per week. I probably practiced astrology 3 hours every day for over, I would say, for almost 10 years now. Just because I'm obsessed with it. It's
Thanks.
like it's
Wow.
like a
Yes,
sickness. I
me
can't really
too.
let go of it. And
Yeah,
and
we cannot live anymore like before. That's
no,
true.
no,
Nobody
and
understands.
because no, because it works, because it gets results, and that's just awesome,
Yes,
right? It's awesome
absolutely.
because when once you understand
Yes.
yourself, and once you accept yourself, right? I
Hmm.
mean, I also had a lot of clients. I mean, I know one of them really told me, no, I'm so thankful for you to do this, to give me this reading, because now I understand that I'm not crazy, right? That it's okay to be different, and that
Exactly,
this is part
exactly.
of
Yes.
myself. And especially for women, right? I mean,
Hmm.
when you're an Aries sun. I don't know the guy's name, but there was a pretty cool astrologer who once said, for him, an Aries sun for women is pretty much a man trapped inside of the body of a woman, because they have this masculine energy, right?
Hmm.
Just like, it doesn't mean that.
Hmm.
I mean, I
Hmm.
know many, and you as well. I know many women who are Aries and who are very feminine too, right? But it actually makes it more
Yes,
interesting when
yes,
they
yes,
have both
yes.
of those
Or
parts,
the
right? They are
opposite.
the warrior, and at the
Yes,
same time
yes.
the gorgeous
The
goddess,
feminine part
beautiful,
too.
feminine.
Yes,
Yeah. So
yes, yes.
it's definitely an
It's a
interesting
mixture
combination, right? And many women are not allowed to live their maybe Aries sun or Leo sun,
because of
if
the culture and
yeah,
yeah,
if you can't even show your hair in
all
some
that talk.
places, how are you going to really be able to live your sun in Leo, right? If you have a sun in Leo.
Exactly, exactly.
So that's
By the
also
way,
important.
sun lines generally, sun lines generally are good for vitality, I would say, or how.
um the sun line, it depends on what kind of sun line you go to, right? The ascendant and midheaven sun lines are very much especially great for also health, right? If you want to improve things.
Mhm,
Also the IC and the DC can be
mhm.
very good for that, but especially the ascendant and the midheaven, they really focus energy. They pretty much shine the energies, um, supportive energy on you when you go to that place. Now, of course, again, there's also people who have a square, let's say Saturn squaring your sun. Your sun line is not gonna be that easy,
Yes.
right? It's gonna
Or
go.
Mars in square with Sun. Yes, a lot of
Yeah,
aggressivity, and
yeah.
immediately you explode.
So
Or yes.
so it's not exactly, so it's not gonna be as light as what other people feel,
Hmm.
or as harmonious. Um, but I still, even the difficult aspects, I urge people to I challenge them to go to the difficult parts. Go to your Pluto line, go to your Saturn line, prepare for it, right? See what the energy actually wants. If you go
Yes.
to Pluto line
Yes.
and you're not willing to
Yes.
surrender, you're gonna get very big problems over there, right? But if you learn to surrender, if you learn to change, a Pluto line can be amazing too, right? And that's the same with any difficult planet.
Exactly. So don't put opposition, let the energy to work, and just be happy that you have the chance. Yeah, it all depends on your goals in the end, I suppose. It's
I
not only.
I
Do
fully
you still
agree.
want to show something on your chart, or
Yes. Let me just
should
show. Let
we
me just show the
move on
next
another
one,
chart? Or
just to show.
yes, please.
So this is where I then moved to Larnaca, or close to it. Nope, that's not the one.
And which house systems you
I
use?
use Placidus, but like I said before, I think that every
Placidus.
house
Hmm.
system has its importance, and
Hmm.
I think
Hmm.
any astrologer who just believes in one house system might want to open their mind and be a little bit more flexible, because nothing is
Yes,
only
and it's
just one direction or one
just
way, right? The universe has very many layers, many dimensions, so it doesn't make sense to just really focus.
completely agree.
Yeah.
Yes,
You can see
completely agree with you.
again, great money aspect. The sun of the country in its own sign sits. It's even better than Jupiter. Everybody wants to have Jupiter in the second house. I have a dominant sun in the second house,
Yes,
right? How great is that, of the country?
this is in it.
This
This
is
is in your
Cyprus.
new
This is
location
this
now.
is
This
this
chart.
is
This is
yes, this is
Cyprus. Hmm.
Cyprus outside, and this is the relocation chart
Hmm.
for my chart in Cyprus, right? You can see it's very similar to Turkey, because it is in a very similar position. You can see that
Yes.
Cyprus doesn't just have the sun there, but also Uranus, right? And it's funny here, because
Hmm.
when you have to get things done here in Cyprus, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there are some challenges. People are like, oh, we're gonna find a way, even if it's like in a gray zone, maybe not even 100% legal. They
Mm-hmm.
find a way to make things happen, and that's like, if it doesn't harm anyone, and if it's not highly problematic.
Yes.
I really like this approach because it gets results quickly, it doesn't hurt anyone, and it helps to
Yes.
think outside of
It's
the box.
positive.
And that's what the people do here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
how do I make money now, right? I make money by doing something that is totally out of the normal, right? And again, Uranus in the second
Yes.
house, right? Now the
And how do you
reason,
feel with the moon? How do you feel
um
with the moon because it's ascendant
so
in Cancer?
yeah, sure. I mean, you can see that the ascendant, I'm sorry, the moon of the country is also squaring
Mm-hmm.
my moon, right? So it's not just nice and
Yes.
easy aspects, but there are a lot of nice ones. But I really, I mean, I always work very much on living my moon. I have my ascendant. I work on being emotional and showing my emotions and expressing what I feel. And
Mm-hmm.
the people here don't have a problem with that. They actually appreciate that too. The Mediterraneans are a bit more open. They're a bit more, especially here. The people in Cyprus, they have a strong, like, doesn't matter if they're Leo or not. They have a Leo energy to them. If we
Good.
go back to the chart,
Yeah.
you can see, again, it's a good
Mm-hmm.
place financially. It's a place where I don't have to pay any taxes for my investments. That's something that's very different in Germany. And you can see that Jupiter sits on the
Mm-hmm.
sixth house cusp, very close to my Saturn
Yeah.
Uranus conjunction that I have, right? So also that is it's good for health,
Mm-hmm.
it's good for work. And once I
Mm-hmm.
started working, which was just 1.5 months ago, things really changed. Things really, really changed a lot. And I feel
Changed.
much better and
Yes.
much healthier because after 6 months of doing nothing, enjoying the retired life, it was, even though I was doing cool things, I
Mm-hmm.
was learning astrology and I was doing fascinating things and interesting, had an interesting life, but something was still, it was really missing that I worked, right? So that was definitely something that I needed, and that's why I start working now, and I,
Yes.
I actually do my astrology. Um, so what you can see here, like
Mm-hmm.
financially, again, very nice place. You can see that now I live on the Sun IC line. Again, you don't have to retire on the Sun IC line, but it is a very good place for that. And I didn't pick Cyprus. Cyprus picked me, right? So I looked at different
Ah,
countries that
that's
had the
interesting.
opportunity, but I always let people, not like, for example, when I ask someone what place draws you, what place calls you, right? What
Mm-hmm.
place wants you to go there? What place feels
Yes.
attractive?
Yes.
That's the place calling them. That's not themselves like deciding and just looking at astrocartography lines or anything. It's really a lot of the times when you really
Mm-hmm.
feel drawn to a place, there is a significance there, and a good astrologer will be able to recognize why you have this aspect, why you have why you have the aspect that really
Um,
makes this.
I used to know that aspects are amplified under the angular lines and a lifestyle change according to your houses. How would you describe this? Because you described now your second house, your sixth house, and I'm just curious if this rule apply only for, as I used to know about angular lines, or
No,
all over the
I,
chart.
I like to look at the relocation chart in general because the whole relocation chart changes, right? You become a different
Hmm.
person in a different place. Not meaning that you completely change, but a lot of your
Yes.
goals change and the way that you approach things, right? Midheaven and Aries. Now I'm really
Hmm.
conquering the astrology world in a way, right? And
Yes.
while I
Yes.
don't do it in an aggressive and immature way, I try to do it as maturely as possible. This is still me, making impact and really uh, making sure that I am also a part of the astrology community by having started a great community with Cindy, even though I'm not the main starter, but we both
Hmm.
really made
Hmm.
sure that the group evolves, right? And this is definitely something that changed in the midheaven here. So I was much more open to do my own things, do my own project, do what I want to do, right? And that's what happened here. Instead of being in a passive place where the midheaven is ruled by Pisces, again, a nice aspect for people who want to be
Yes.
healers, for people who want to do something where they help people, for do something for the general people's health and their well-being. The midheaven on the Aries really changes. And by the way, your sun pretty much sits on my midheaven right now, right? Which is opposing my sun, by the way. Um, so what is interesting is when these changes happen, right, you cannot see them on the astrocartography map. You can only see it when a planet is hitting it, right? But a change of the ascendant
Yes,
can be
yes, yes.
significant because your whole chart is ruled differently all of a sudden, right? And again,
Mm-hmm.
we can go much
Yes.
deeper into it, but it doesn't make sense. It makes more sense to understand that this is just another system, just like a human would be another system, and to see how a system is in
Mm-hmm.
resonance with us, right? And you can see, sure, I live on
Yes.
my sun line, but I also have, look at these thick, I mean, the thicker the line, the more accurate the aspect. Look at us, all of these thick blue lines, right? A lot of very favorable, nice ones.
Yes.
Sure, there are some challenges too, right, with the moon and
Yes.
the Venus, but the overall
Mm-hmm.
energy is pretty
Mm-hmm.
pretty decent and pretty nice. And also having a
Yeah, you have a
Venus,
beautiful chart. I would say
yeah,
you, yes, you have everything there. I mean,
and I feel
and
it,
all these squares, I believe a lot in this energy who is motivating you to
yeah,
do steps and to act and to build something. Because without squares, I believe we can't do too much in our
yeah,
life. So
yeah,
I'm lucky when I watch at my squares, and it's not only that I position myself in a healthy way of thinking about my chart,
yeah,
my birth chart, but it's that's the truth. That's what I feel. Without that energy, what are we doing? Nothing.
yeah.
I've
I
met
fully
people
agree.
with a lot of trines and sextiles, and they are. I can't say they are super happy or super.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Well, they require also a lot of work,
When
right?
you have too much from,
If you have a nice talent, the
yes,
talent is worth nothing if you don't work on the skill. I
yes,
mean, one of the
absolutely.
greatest things to look at is, I mean, Germany is famous for its pianist. We have Bach, we have Mozart, we have Beethoven. It's
Mm,
famous for it. And
yes,
look at all of these great musicians, right, who really impacted the music world today that we have. Uh, what would happen if you didn't give them a piano? Nothing.
yeah,
Yeah, they have a good talent. Who
nothing, and
cares, right?
yes,
So you have to work on
yes,
the talents, and
exactly.
that's the thing. Like a lot of astrologers, they try to micromanage the best chart for a project. It doesn't matter if you don't put the nice necessary work into it, even if it's a hard aspect, right? If you don't put the work into it, nothing is gonna come out of it, and that's something that's very very important
Another,
to understand.
yes, another question which I had in my head for this meeting, it was, when would you advise us to use astrolocation?
Um,
When?
anytime. I mean, first of all, if it's something that we're interested in, we're gonna look at it regularly, anyways, right? And you can, I mean, because I'm a researcher, I look at it every time. I don't know, let's say I buy something specific, I buy a specific food from a specific place, and I regularly buy it,
Hmm.
regularly. Then, or if I buy clothes from a specific place, right, from a specific brand, the main place of that brand is gonna have an effect, right? And the question that I always ask myself is, what kind of energy am I trying to harness, right? What kind of energy am I trying to get from
Yes.
that place? And the funny
Hmm.
thing is, the intuition already knows what you want, and the astrology can just show you what kind of
Yes.
energy you're actually trying to look out for, right? And then you can also, what I highly recommend people to do is look at if you have a song you're completely obsessed with, look at the first release date, or look at when the song was recorded. If you, a lot of the times you only have the release date, but if you
Hmm.
also have the recording, that's awesome. Look at when it was recorded, look at when it was released, look at the synastry aspect to your chart, and then you'll see what kind of planetary aspects are happening at that time, right? And that's very very significant.
And what's the explanation of the, yes, of the resonance, because it's a resonance there and you have an answer. I have, what is the distance in kilometer on which an energy line activates? Can you say, can you talk even about something like this in astrocartography, or it's a little too much and it's
Again,
not a good question? I don't know, it's just, I think a line makes its effect felt up to a certain distance, or how is it, in kilometers, the distance, when you choose a line, you say, okay, I go on this country fit with my birth chart, and there are a lot of towns in that country. So depends how you go. You go on more on west or more on east direction, and you change some things.
Yes.
I'm curious about this influence in kilometers. If there is a
Yes.
specific
Of course.
diameter, if you can describe like
Let me
that,
just.
when an energetic line
Of course. Of
create an
course.
effect in your chart.
Um.
Because on my case, I'm under the Chiron line, and that's why I'm
Mhm.
asking here in Ulm. But if I move, for example, in the direction of Stuttgart or more on the west, things start to change, and I go under. For example, if I go around Bodensee, which is a wonderful area, and I would love to live there.
Where your
Of course,
husband
it's
comes from.
expensive, but it's great in Germany. Yes, my husband is born there, and I was thinking very often, okay, why we don't move there? I instantly activate my sun on my ascendant, and it would be a difference, I suspect. I hope.
So
I don't know.
let me
I'm
just
just asking you.
show you
It's
something, because I think that's very, very valuable. You can find it at
mm-hmm.
astrocartography.com. Let me just see if I can find that picture, because there's a picture that shows
Okay.
how far the orbs actually have an effect, right? And let me just see where you have that.
Mm-hmm.
Here, orbs of influence. That's actually the first one. There's a very nice thing that shows at least one of the ideas of how it could work, and then at least this is what Jim Lewis said. Again, Jim Lewis isn't right with
Mm-hmm.
everything, but you can see that here it says the strongest impact is between 300 miles in both directions, right? 500 kilometers in both directions, and the weak zone, sorry, altogether. So if you are around 300 miles away from it, if you are around 150 miles away from it, you have a more strong effect. If you go a little further away, it's less, right? So the way that I see it, especially like if it's 100 kilometers within reach, then it's very, very strong,
Mm-hmm.
right? If it's within 50, it's even stronger. But then again, you also always need to consider that you don't know how 100% accurate your chart is, right? So that's always something to birth time, right? How accurate is the birth time? So it doesn't make sense to macromanage way too much. You don't have to live 0 kilometers on
Yes.
your line.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But if you live on your astrocartography lines, um, even if you are 300 miles away, it will still have an effect. It will still have a strong impact on you, and that's something to really take into consideration when you use
Yes.
this. Is
Absolutely.
when you are close to it, it will have a stronger effect for sure, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it also you also have to look at other aspects as well. But if you want to see how strong an aspect is, if you sit exactly on it or 30 to 100 kilometers away from it, it will have a very strong impact. And the bigger the planet, or the closer, right, like the moon is very close, they might even have a wider orb, right?
Very true.
Because the sun is the biggest object, bigger than everything else together in the solar system,
Mm-hmm.
and the moon is the closest object. So of
Yes.
course they
The
have a
wider.
very
Yes.
this
But which
this
one
one
are
here
the
is Mars.
which
The
one are
orb
the
that I'm
orbs
using
with what
is
you are
up
working?
to up
How do
to
you use?
I would say up to 300 miles in both directions have an impact, right? So up to 300 miles away from a line still has a very strong impact. That's how I see it.
Okay. And from your experience in working with the people who you've met until now, which lines are the heaviest to handle, if I can say so? I mean, I don't believe in good or bad,
Of
in
course, of course.
negative or positive planets, or but what type of energies do you think are the most difficult to handle, and in which of these 4 points, angular points, how would you describe?
The most difficult has to be one of the most difficult has to be Pluto,
Pluto.
right?
Hmm.
Because it's all about transformation. It's about death and rebirth.
Hmm.
Cindy, right, the other admin of the AstroCartoGraphy Locational Astrology group on Facebook, the other admin, she also has been living on her Pluto line. For her, it wasn't fun at
Wow.
all. It was very, very
Yes.
challenging. Then again, she became an astrologer there. She changed. She did a lot of fascinating things.
Hmm.
For her, still, she says like majority of people, she doesn't really like them. She doesn't really feel good there, and a lot of people try to mess with her, right? And they try to undermine her and do power struggles, and
Yes.
that's something that can happen on Pluto lines very much. Other people are born on their Pluto line and they live there and they love it, right? So some people actually love the intensity of
But
Pluto, right? Pluto can
when you
be
say
very
when you
intense.
say under the line of Pluto, you describe Pluto on the ascendant
Mhm.
or on MC, midheaven, or where it's.
For her, it was on. for her it was on midheaven, but any line,
line.
right? No matter which one it is,
Okay.
with Pluto is difficult,
Okay.
right? And midheaven is of course a very prominent place because it is the way that people see you. It's your status, right? It's also what you work and the way that you approach your career. So that definitely has an impact for sure, right? And all of these lines,
Yes.
right? The only difference is if it's on the descendant, it's about the relationships that transform you. If it's in the if it's on the ascendant, it's you become the platonic person.
Yes.
If it's on the midheaven, it's how you you become as your career and the way that you live your life path. It becomes platonic. And if it's on the IC, you will have relationships to people who you seem to know from your past lives, and also people who you feel have like a deep, very deep connection, and they really have a deep impact on your roots,
Yes.
right? So
And for the
so
IC,
that's
yes, sorry, for the IC, what would you recommend? Which planet do you think it makes your life easier? Because in general, IC, I think it's something connected with the subconscious and with your memories, and you cannot control so easy. You don't realize what's going
yeah.
on very
So
often there. And
the IC, for I mean the first thing with the IC is it's the fourth house, right? It's the beginning of
yes,
the fourth house. Now
yes,
if we look at the houses, every house resonates with the sign, and the first sign being Aries, the fourth house makes it Cancer, right? And what is ruling Cancer is the moon. So
the
if you have
moon.
the moon and the IC, that if it's in a good position, that can be a very, very, very nice aspect to have,
Don't
right?
don't
So the
tell
moon
me
on the
that
IC is, yeah.
don't tell me that the ideal birth chart would be with the Mars on the ascendant and with the moon at the fourth house and with Venus at
It
the
doesn't have to
seventh
be. It's not
house.
that simple.
I don't
No,
believe something like this
no,
exists. I mean, I
it's
was
not
not
that
trying.
simple. No,
No. Okay.
no, no, no,
Okay. Okay.
no.
Okay.
It's not
Okay.
it's not that it's not that simple, right? And
Okay.
even if you have these aspects, it's still like your family and everybody in your surroundings also decide with you how you can live your chart,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
even if you have the
Yes.
most favorable aspects, also in synastry with people, right? You
Mm-hmm.
might find, I mean, not you anymore, but for example, me, I might find a woman
Mm-hmm.
and we might have the perfect chart together, but maybe I'm immature in some things, maybe she's immature in some things.
Yes. And
And
it's
even though
just
we have
don't.
a, let's say,
Yeah.
Mars Venus conjunction,
Mm-hmm.
if my Mars isn't very active and her Venus sits on my Mars and I'm not doing sports and I'm not living my Mars, it's not going to be attractive to her. It's not, right. And there's also the question, how mature are you living your aspects, right? If you look at the interpretations of the most of the synastry people
Mm-hmm.
who
Yes.
interpret them, they don't really show that you can live a planet actively, you can live it inactively, you can live it maturely or immaturely.
Yes.
What would be an immature sun, active sun, in Leo, would be someone who needs to brag all the time, who forcefully tries to be the center of attention, right?
Yes.
But if it's
Mm-hmm.
a mature sun in Leo, this would be a great leader, right? A great
Mm-hmm.
father figure, a great someone who really, understands greater systems and organizations and is very good at organizing things in general, right? And
Yes.
shining
Yes.
and mastering things. So
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
think that is very, very significant to understand that this, like every aspect you have in synastry, you always have to ask, or in your natal chart, what planets am I actually already living,
Mm-hmm.
right? What am I
Mm-hmm.
living already that I am? Uh, and what aspects am I maybe overly living while others are actually crying and want to be lived as well, right?
Yes. Yes.
If you
Yes.
are a workaholic and you work too much, you have a very nice and active Saturn. At the same time, your Venus, your Sun, all of the other ones start to get into the shadows, and that's also not very good,
Not okay. Yes. So,
right? So
in the end, as an ideal future, starting from this moment, I would say let's travel as often as we can. Let's afford to do this. Let's use the online because look, now we have this
yes,
fantastic opportunity. Thanks God. And
yeah,
let's see what we can activate and when and how, because this is in the end like a
yeah,
recipe. I mean, each person has his own recipe, and there is not a recipe for all of us available. So, yes. It's a complex
yeah.
topic,
I
absolutely.
fully agree.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic, and I would like to continue. And I hope we will see again a second time. I'm absolutely sure. I was just opening a little, this topic. It's impossible to get over all the details. It's a too complex
Well,
subject.
I would like, if this one didn't work, we're gonna do it anyways again. But I definitely also offer you a second part where we talk about you and your partner,
Yes, we can do
right?
it. Yes,
And the astrocartography.
yes.
And I think it will just be easy because, I mean, just like for me, I have my stories, you have your stories,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can see how it fits in, right? Because I can just see what energies happen, and
Mm-hmm.
you are the one who knows how they actually manifested and how you actually channeled them and how your partner
Yes,
channeled them,
yes.
and the challenges that you had in the real life, right?
Mm,
So I'm more than happy to do that as well.
me too, and thank you again because you
Yeah.
accepted the invitation and for all the tips and everything.
Yeah.